for joining another All Hands on Tech with your host, David Neal. That's me. I hope you've been enjoying this series of developer streams. And the last few weeks, we started looking at building a new game project with Node.js and Fastify and a few other pieces of technology, Socket.io so far. And today I'm going to introduce a couple of front-end technologies. I don't want to go too far down the path of building something just using plain HTML, JavaScript, and CSS because, why not take advantage of, a good front-end framework to help us go faster? And a couple of pieces of technology that I want to introduce today are Vue and Tailwind CSS. So both of those I've been using in recent years, and I really like them. I think they're great solutions for building front end web apps, and even Electron and other web based technologies too. Vue and Tailwind have created a really good environment for building stuff. So, if in case you haven't watched any of the previous streams, what we're doing is building a multiplayer online trivia application, so that you and some of your friends can join and play a trivia game together, much like some of the online games you may have played in recent years. And I am building a game for Pluralsight coming up to AWS reInvent conference. And I'm taking the things that I'm learning from building that app, and I'm, directly applying that to us building this game together on this stream. So you're benefiting from some of the struggles and some of the things that I've already gone through building a similar app for Pluralsight. And as always, if you are watching this stream or anytime after, if you're watching a recording of this, and you have feedback, you had questions, you have suggestions on things that we could cover together, or just anything and everything, please let me know. The comments are open on whatever platform you're using to watch this video. And I am Reverent Geek everywhere. So reverentgeek.com is my website. I'm Reverent Geek on GitHub and Twitter and Instagram. There's lots of different ways you can get in contact with me. So if you have any questions or anything you want to propose or suggest, I'd love to hear your feedback and help answer anything that may come up. So do post something in the chat and let me know you're there. It's kind of tough sometimes to go through an entire stream and just have nothing but crickets. But we'll forge on ahead regardless. If you're interested in taking a look at the source code or playing around with the source code at any time along the way, you can find that on my GitHub repository under github.com/reverentgeek/AHOT-trivia-game. AHOT stands for All Hands on Tech, which is the series of streams that we're doing. So grab the source code if you're so inclined, and let's get to work. There's a README in the source code, which I'll switch over to right now. So grab your source code at AHOT trivia-game. And last week, what we the first couple of streams that we've done on this project, you've got configuring the Fastify and Socket IO technologies so that we have a back end for the application. And last week we defined some game states, and we were able to show and hide different blocks of HTML based on the current state of the game. And before we go any further, like I mentioned before, I want to go ahead and add to this project Vue and Tailwind, because I don't see a whole lot of value in continuing down the path of using just plain JavaScript, because why wouldn't you take advantage of using a front end framework that helps you to go faster and to create things that's solved a lot of things for you already. There's a reason why frameworks like Vue and Angular and React and Svelte and so many others exist, because they're all trying to make building web apps a little bit easier for certain applications and use cases and scenarios. For me, Vue kind of clicks and checks off a lot of boxes of things that I enjoy. Each framework has its own set of opinions, and I kind of agree with the opinions that Vue has. It seems to fit for me. May not fit for you, but hopefully, even if Vue is not something you're interested in, there's things to learn from using this technology on this stream that you may be able to. Oh, that's a neat idea. I wonder if your framework, fill in the blank, does a similar kind of thing, and you can explore that, because all these frameworks today are borrowing ideas from each other, right? So they see how one framework implements some kind of feature and think, well, that's really cool. It's how can we do that in our framework, and how can we maybe do it a little bit different or a little bit better? So what a time to be a software developer. There's so many awesome projects and open source libraries and things that we can take advantage of. So I guess I'll go ahead and just put in here as an intermediary step, add Vue and Tailwind CSS to the project. And that's what we're going to do next. And time permitting, which shouldn't take that long, I don't think, to add this stuff to the project, we may go ahead and implement a form for allowing a player to enter a name and join the current game. Now, where you're definitely taking a kind of a naive approach to a lot of these things so far, as you get along in a project, it always turns out to be a little bit more complicated than you first thought it might be. We're not going to solve problems right away, like how do we deal with multiple games being run simultaneously. We're just going to focus on having a game server for one game at a time. And, maybe somewhere down the road, we can look at ways, strategies we could employ to build a true scalable game that can, you can have multiple groups of people running their own games at the same time. That would be a fun challenge, problem to solve. And as part of the project, if you haven't been on one of the previous streams, I'm using Node.js as the back end. You need Node.js LTS. LTS stands for long-term support. That just means the latest stable version of Node, which heads up, that is about to change. So this time of the year is when the current version of Node is promoted to LTS, and that is version 18. Right now, version 16 is the latest LTS, and 18 has been out for many months and has being tested around the world. And now version 18 will soon be, maybe next week, promoted to LTS. And when that happens, I'll switch to using version 18 all the time. Um, it's really cool to see that process work. Install MVM if you don't already have it to manage your versions of Node on your system, and this applies to Linux, Mac, and the Linux subsystem for Windows. If you're on Windows, I highly recommend you install the Linux subsystem and use that, because the tools just kind of work a little bit better. Not that you can't do everything you need to do at a regular command prompt or PowerShell prompt, but the Linux subsystem is pretty nice. You'll want to clone and download the source code, clone or download the source code, and unzip it to some project folder. Run npm install to install any dependencies, and then make a copy of the environment sample file, rename it to .env, and then make any changes to your .env file that you wish to make. Right now, there's only a couple of values in there. That is the port and the host address. And for me, I'm currently using port 8080 8888. Oh gosh. And host 0000, which, as I explained on the last stream, this was before I started specifying this, I was getting in trouble trying to use localhost as my address in my browser. It just wasn't working with sockets. So once I changed the host port or the host address, sockets started to work. Don't know why. May just be a Mac OS thing. I don't know. That's what I'm running on. But if you do run into something like that, that may be the culprit. All right. So we're going to introduce Vue and Tailwind to our project. And the way I'm going to do that is go to the command line. One of the things I do on a regular basis, maybe once a week or at least a few times a month, is check to make sure that dependencies are up to date. Sometimes y'all get alerts that a security fix has been published or something like that. I think it's a good idea just to periodically check on things. So the way I do that is npm outdated, and it looks at the dependencies that are in the package.json file and determines if any of them are, if there's updates available. And depending on how new the update is, maybe it's a major simver, running npm update won't automatically update that package. If it's a major simver, or if it's a major jump in between a minor version to another minor version, if you're using like a package that's 0 dot something, then the minor version starts to act like a major version in that it won't automatically update from release to release. So npm update, already ran npm update, npm outdated. So now that list is clear. I don't have anything else that needs to be updated. But if you ran npm update and then run npm updated again, and there's still something listed, then it's probably a more major update to that package. And if you really want to upgrade to that new version, you may want to see what breaking changes there are to make sure that you're not going to break something in your project. And you can do that with npm docs followed by the name of the project. So like, let's take, for example, npm docs fastify. What that will do is open up the default documentation link in the package for that package, and go to your default browser and take you there. That way you can read any kind of documentation or release notes or any of that kind of stuff. It's a nice shortcut. If you decide you want to update a package that isn't being updated automatically, then you could say npm install fastify at latest, and that will force npm to upgrade your version of whatever that is to the latest version. All right. All our packages are currently up to date. Now let's install some more dependencies. I'm going to install Vue, which I think that's all I need to do. That's going to add Vue to the package JSON. Yep, right there. And then I also want to add Tailwind. But here's the thing about Tailwind. We don't have to install it as a production dependency. We can install it as a developer dependency because there's a build process that happens with Tailwind. Tailwind is not, it's a little bit different from most other CSS frameworks. Most CSS frameworks are like this big library of CSS styles, and you just pick and choose what CSS styles out of that library that you want to use in your project. Whereas Tailwind analyzes your code, like your HTML, your other CSS files, JavaScript files, Vue files, JSX files, any kind of files where you might be using HTML classes, and it determines which classes your application currently depends on, and it builds a smaller CSS file that only has what you need for your application, which is really cool. It reduces the amount of weight for your CSS that is delivered for the client, which I think is a cool thing. So to install it, we're going to use the save-dev flag to save it as a developer dependency, and it's Tailwind CSS. All right. Let's see, what else might we need? We got those dependencies installed. We have a developer script right now, a dev script that so when we run npm run dev at the command line, it's going to launch the application using NodeMon. NodeMon, in a nutshell, is a runner that monitors any changes for file changes in your project. And if you change say a JavaScript file or something like that, it automatically restarts the server, which is really nice because that saves you several steps of having to stop the application, do whatever steps you need to do to restart it. So I do know that for Tailwind, we need a build step. And you can name these. These are just labels in your npm scripts. You can name these anything you want. Like there's a common convention where people will say build and then add a colon or some other separator and say exactly what that build step is, because you might have multiple steps in your build process. But for now, we just need one, and that is for Tailwind to build our kind of a production CSS file. There's an input, and there is, a path to input CSS file, and then there's an output parameter. So we'll need to fix these with whatever file names and paths we decide to do. And for the developer step, we need, anytime that NodeMon is restarted or before NodeMon runs, we need to have this build step run so that the CSS is up to date. Otherwise, we may run into issues where we're coding along and we're adding new classes to some HTML elements, and we go and, NodeMon automatically restarts the web server for us, behind the scenes, and we refresh the page in our browser, and the changes that we just made aren't showing up. Well, that's because the Tailwind process needs to run to add those classes you may have put in your HTML, so that, it's in the final file. So to do that, we need to tell NodeMon that in addition to running the server, it needs to execute our build step. So instead of we're going to escape these quotes embedded in this string, and we need to run npm run build, which is that step above, and after that step runs, run npm run start, which will load the web server. So we need to define what start is. And start looks similar to what we had before, node, and point it to source index.js. So NodeMon here, instead of launching the application, we're going to tell it to monitor some different folders. So we want it to, let's see, right now we just have our source folder. Let's say watch source. And the extensions that we want NodeMon to be watching for are JavaScript files, obviously, and that's what it monitors by default. Or maybe it monitors by default every file. I don't know. But I usually like to specify what extensions NodeMon should be monitoring. So JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. That way, if we make any change to the CSS file, it's going to trigger a rebuild, just like it would to our JavaScript. Again, anytime you have a question, or if there's something that you would like for me to clarify, please post that in the chat wherever you're watching this. LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook. That's where I'm streaming to today. And while we're on that subject, if you want to go back and watch any of the previous streams where I've set up this project and, shared a number of other tips about building Node.js applications, you can find those on the Pluralsight YouTube channel. So if you go to YouTube, search for Pluralsight, look in the videos that are on there, you can see previous all hands on tech streams that I have hosted. So please do that if you want to catch up. All right, so we've got some of this stuff ready. We need to decide where is our source CSS file going to live and where is the production one going to live. And so I think, if I remember correctly, we're creating a static directory called public, where where our files are going to any kind of front end resources like our assets, such as CSS and JavaScript, any images, all that stuff is going to go into the public folder. And right now that public folder lives under source, which may not be the best place for it, considering that source and public are, source is kind of the source code for the project, obviously, but it's also considered to be like the server side. So we could do a couple of things. One is we move public outside of the source folder and have it as a top level folder in the project, or we could inside source create a new folder called server and have one folder be for server side code and one folder be for client side code. And if we somewhere down the road, if we decide we want to use a tool like Parcel or Webpack or any of the other kinds of build tools that you may want to use to compile the front end code, take the JavaScript and turn it into JavaScript that is compatible with older browsers and all that kind of good stuff, then those kinds of tools by default usually take everything and bundle your JavaScript and CSS and other assets and put those into a folder called dist, D-I-S-T, for like distribution. And that normally lives at the top level of the project. So it might make sense to, just thinking ahead, to go ahead and treat this public folder as that top level distribution folder, dist folder. So I'm going to take this public folder and move it up if I can. No, I don't want to move it into node modules. Maybe I'll go this direction. Yes. So we have source and public. So maybe in the source, think about this. I don't want to introduce any other kind of build steps right now. So I'm just going to leave this the way that it is. And then down here in the, maybe the views, or maybe I'll just go ahead and create a folder here called client for our client code and create a file called game.css. So source client, game.css. Okay. And our build step, we need to take the code that is currently source client game.css and the output needs to be public and let's just put it in the root of the folder, game.css. Okay. And we don't have anything in game CSS right now. Let's remedy that. So one of the things we need to do when setting up Tailwind is we need to declare that we're using Tailwind base. And this is kind of like your imports, but it's specifically for Tailwind. Tailwind components and Tailwind utilities. And we might throw in something like HTML. There's other ways of setting the default font size for a project, but I'm just curious, or I want to verify that this becomes gets compiled into the production game CSS file. So we got our basic CSS. One other thing that we need, I think, is a Tailwind config. And if I remember correctly, you can create that using the Tailwind library. Let me just do a quick search. So it is optional. By default, Tailwind will look for an optional Tailwind config file at the root of your project where you can define any customizations. So default fonts, default color, colors for your application theme, font families, all that good stuff. So we don't need it yet, but I know we'll probably need it in the future. So let's just go ahead and create it. So I'll clear the screen here, and we can use MPX Tailwind init. So MPX is a kind of node package execution utility. You can run MPX anywhere, regardless if you're in a node project folder or not. And you can basically, it's kind of like a global utility. And if the dependency that you're calling, in this case Tailwind, if it exists inside the project that you're where you're currently are in your terminal, it will take advantage of that. If you're outside of a project or you're using a module that is not installed as a dependency in that project, it will first confirm that, ask for your permission. Do you want to download this module and run it? And you can do that. So it's a good way, since MPX has been introduced, there are a number of open source projects that have taken advantage of MPX as being like the way to scaffold a new project. So they've added some utilities or commands to take it, for you to run MPX space whatever and create a new project that is, has a starter kit starting point. So MPX Tailwind init, all that's going to do is make sure that the tailwind.config file is valid. And the reason I'm getting complaints is my ESLint rules. And we can remedy that by adding use strict at the top of this module. I explained this in previous streams, but use strict is a good idea for any server-side Node.js code, unless you're using ES modules, which is where you would use import export instead of require and module.exports. ES modules have strict mode turned on by default. Okay, there's our config file. And so now we can test our build step. We can run npm run build. And it says, warning, no utility classes were detected in your source files. If this is unexpected, double check, and so forth. So did it actually do anything? It sure did. It created a game.css file in the public folder, and everything that's in here is kind of like a CSS reset. So it's Tailwind. First thing it does is it kind of normalizes all the CSS behavior for every browser so that there's a common starting point for any CSS that's added on top of that. So all of these are kind of like setting defaults so that it will behave the same in every browser. And then hopefully we'll find way down here at the very bottom, there's our HTML font size 20 pixels. So it's taking this game.css as an input and is building the CSS that we need as the output. So if we go to the index.html, right now, let's see, hidden, I think, is actually a class in Tailwind. So if we get rid of that, one thing we may want to do, this may be important. Let's just see class hidden. I know there's like let's see, MX8. Let's say MX8. So it's cool that Visual Studio, I have the Tailwind extension already installed in Visual Studio, and that does the work of reading in whatever version of Tailwind I have installed in this project and exposing through IntelliSense the classes that are available. So MX-8, what that means in Tailwind is margins left and right. So that's the x-axis, margin left and right, 8 rels, which translates to 32 pixels, as it says right here. So it's 2 rems, 32 pixels. So if I leave that in there and I rerun the build, it's still saying that no utility classes were detected. So that may mean that Tailwind is not looking in other parts of the project to see for HTML, CSS, and JavaScript files and all that stuff. So this is where the config file will help. This content array is where we can tell Tailwind where to look for all of our files that may contain CSS classes. And this is an array. We can give it multiple views. So this is going to be source / views HTML. So any HTML file it finds in views, we want to compile that. or inspect that for CSS. And then on also in our public, I know when we start using um, components and things for view, that some of those HTML classes or CSS classes can be embedded in JavaScript or Vue files. So let's go ahead and tell Tailwind to also look in public and just any JavaScript file in any folder. That's what this glob pattern is telling it to do. Is like look in that folder and any subfolders for the JavaScript extension. So now with that change in place, if we run the build, we don't get that warning message anymore. And if we open up the game, make sure I'm looking at the one that's in public, we see that at the bottom, after the standard kind of reset stuff, we see two classes have been added, MX8 and Hidden, which are the two classes that I'm using, currently using inside that HTML file. So Tailwind is doing its job. It's scanning HTML, JavaScript files, and any classes that it finds. It's appending those definitions to the bottom of this output CSS. Cool. Let's test that our run dev still works. So when we npm run dev, the first thing it does is it runs Tailwind, and then after Tailwind runs, it launches the web server. Let's see what that looks like. It's port 8888. There's our very, very basic AHOT, All Hands on Tech trivia game, and we can click the button to start a new game, and that's not working. Let's see. Failed. Oh, we changed the path of where the JavaScript file is. So can't find client.js. So this is we need to make sure that this guy, so it's the public folder no longer exists inside the source folder. So __ dir name is translated to, the current folder that the application is executing in. So it's actually executing in the source folder. So we need to tell it to back up one folder structure or in the hierarchy, and then access the public folder there. So before I save the file, let's make sure the console is open, because I want to see, as soon as I save this file, does it restart the server? So saving now, and sure enough, as soon as I saved the JavaScript file, it rebuilt the CSS file and restarted the server. So if we refresh now, we don't get any JavaScript errors. That's working correctly. But the the code that we had before with showing and hiding different blocks of HTML, that's not working. That's okay. We'll fix that with Vue in a moment. But just out of, I am curious what that, what could, what's not working. So we were using this thing where it says class list contains hidden um, and then our HTML, what does that look like? Hidden and hidden. Oh, I removed the client side. No, it's still right. So let's take a look at still got a hidden class. But this other one does not. Um, may just be that the the Tailwind version of hidden is not doing the same thing that I'm expecting it to do. But it's display none. That should do it. I thought display none is the right thing. Again, this is a rabbit hole we don't really need to worry about, but I am curious as to why this is not working. So the class on this div is currently hidden. Oh, I know. Silly me. We don't have a reference to the CSS file in here in the HTML file. So I think I removed it. That's what I removed. I don't know why I removed it. I had embedded CSS instead of looking at a particular CSS file. So we need to add a link up here to our style sheet. And it's going to live at /game.css. All right. Save that. Refresh. And all kinds of interesting stuff. We, because of the CSS reset, none of the kind of default styles that normally would show up are there anymore. So we have a trivia game. So H1 tags have no styling by default. H2s, all that kind of stuff. Everything is normalized down to, pretty much generic stuff. This class has an MX-8, which means, it's the margins. So it is, moving in that content um, by that many pixels. So it's doing what it's supposed to do. So instead of having the MX-8 here, let's put MX-8 on the body. And we can start doing some things like text 3XL, font bold. These are all classes that are part of Tailwind. And we can, let's see. Here's our home. We got a button down here. Let's change this class to trying to think. Background slate 400, rounded full. We could add some padding. So let's say P-4. That means padding all the way around this paragraph. We also should add some padding in this button. So padding 3. Well, maybe not padding 4 up here, maybe margin Y. So think of top and bottom as being like the Y axis. So the different ways you can specify things in Tailwind is like M for margins, P for padding, and then followed by if you specify nothing, then it adds 4 margins on all borders of the box. So top right, bottom left in CSS. But you can also specify, be very specific. You can say margin Y, which is top and bottom, margin X, which is left and right, or you can do individual ones like MT for top and say only apply this margin setting to the top of the box. So MT for, so let's say MY for home. Let's say class is font bold. And let's just go with that. So all along the way, as I was making changes to that HTML file, NodeMon was detecting that change and restarting, rebuilding the game.css, which we should be able to see here. If I go down, now we have MX8, MY4, hidden, rounded full, the colors for BG background slate, padding, and all this great stuff. So Tailwind is definitely doing its job like it's supposed to. Now, if we refresh this page, we've got a bunch more styling applied. Very cool. And if we click Start New Game, it hides the old one and shows the new block of HTML. I don't think we have enough time we're close to the top of the hour to really dive into Vue yet. We'll do that on the next stream. Start adding some cool components to the project using Vue.js. Be able to show and hide different parts of the app. Be able to respond to click events and the form for joining the game, and really start to make some progress on making the front end dynamic. Hope you'll join me again for the next stream, and let's start working on that together. In the next few minutes, I'll keep this rolling for a minute. If you have any questions about anything that we've covered today, please post those in your chat. Or if you've gotten any value out of some of the stuff that we've covered today, let me know. I'd love to hear what you're getting out of this stream, or what you're getting out of this stream series if you're returning from previous versions. So while I'm waiting to see if there are any questions, I'm going to stop the server, take a look at our, clear the screen. hit status. Here's all the stuff that we changed today. That feels good to see lots of files updated. Go in here to the README, and yes, we added those dependencies to the project today. And we also set up Tailwind configuration and build process. And I'm going to go ahead and commit this stuff. Adds Vue and Tailwind dependencies, and push that to the repository. Great. Some comments have come in. Herman says, sorry I'm late. Would like to know if this stream will last for a week so that I can watch it over again soon. Yes, absolutely. So if I am not sure about how the retention policy on other platforms, but I do know that this is also being streamed with YouTube. And if you go to Pluralsight's website, let me switch here. If you go to Pluralsight on YouTube, you can look under the videos that have been posted and find previous streams of this All Hands on Tech. So if you're interested in checking out any of this stream, a recording of this stream, or any of the previous streams, you can find those on the Pluralsight YouTube channel. If you want the source code for everything that we've been working on, you can go to my GitHub repository, github.com/reverentgeek/ahot-trivia-game. AHOT stands for All Hands on Tech, which is this series of streams. Hope you find it there. And another question came in from YouTube. Very similar. Great job and project. Will you post the stream as a video for later use? Yep, just told you. So hopefully that gives you the information that you need. Again, my name is David Neal. I'm a developer advocate for Pluralsight. You can find me at reverentgeek.com. I'm also Reverent Geek on Twitter and Instagram and GitHub and lots of other places. There's lots of ways you can get in touch with me. So if you're watching this as a recording and you would like to get in touch with me, you can find me on my website and on Twitter. You can find me on LinkedIn. Feel free to ask any questions, and I'd love to hear your feedback. Thanks for joining, and look forward to seeing you again on a future All Hands on Tech with your host, David Neal. Hope you have a wonderful day, and see you again soon.